Hey, movie fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Uncharted Media Podcast. This is episode Ty Dillinger 10, the perfect 10. Although we are far from perfect here, we've got so many news topics today. I'm excited to talk about some of these. Although the main topic, is with a very heavy heart to discuss. But before we get into the movie news topics, Josh, how are you doing tonight?
I'm chilling like a villain, man. I've made the commitment tonight. For those that don't know, I've been balding for a while, and you normally just take a some clippers and just take it all the way down as far as I can. But tonight I went full stone cold and took a razor to it, and I'm as clean as a baby's butt right now. It's kind of weird. I don't know how I feel about it.
Thank you for that visual on this audio-only podcast.
You're welcome.
Well, let's jump into the news, and let's get the really tough one out of the way first. The big news is grabbing a lot of the headlines, and rightly so, is the unfortunate passing of legend Stan Lee. I believe he passed away Monday, I think is when we lost him, unfortunately. But the rallying of support has been phenomenal, and what a life that guy lived. We actually, to be completely honest, we had a completely different discussion and plan for the show, but then without missing a beat, as soon as we saw the news, we're like, no, it's not right to talk about anything other than Stan Lee and his legacy this week. He meant a lot to us and to a lot of other comic book fans, so that's going to be our main topic of discussion tonight, is Marvel, just Marvel in general and Stan Lee's impact. But yeah, where were you, Josh, when you heard Stan Lee? Because I actually heard it from you. Your text that you sent me is when I heard.
Yeah, so I was just at work, doing work things, as you do when you're at work. And I think because I work in a kitchen, right? And so I do a lot of things, and I happen to be working the grill or whatever. And the assistant general manager at my store is also a big nerd, and she poked her head into the kitchen and was like, "Josh, Stan Lee just died," and then popped out and left. And I was like, "Whoa! You can't just drop that kind of stuff and run away." No way. And so I stopped what I was doing and I went out in the main dining area, and I was like, "Hey, is this for real?" Because I remember a time like last year when all those deaths were happening, somebody posted up a fake one of Stan Lee, and we were like, "Oh no!" And then it turned out to be fake, and we're like, "Okay, cool, he's still alive." But then, so I was trying to I didn't believe it right off the bat. So and then she was like, "No, look, see, here's all these news stories confirming his death," and I was like, "Oh, well, that kind of ruined my day."
Yeah, I saw the text from you. I also was at work where I don't typically like to check my phone unless I'm changing music or podcasts while I'm working. So I saw that, and I'm surrounded by higher ups, and I was just like, I gotta express this, but I don't think everybody else is gonna have concern. And I said, and actually, I could tell people were like, "Why are you checking your phone?" But then as soon as I said that, they're just like, "Oh, okay, that's a big enough piece of information that you can share with us, and you're kind of justified in checking your phone." And because I don't know, his appeal really reaches everybody. Everyone has a 6 degrees of separation with Stan Lee or some form of a connection to him. And yeah, we'll get more into our personal stories later, but he's like the modern Walt Disney in that everyone has a story, and he has built this whole world that is beloved by millions. And we almost forget that he was 95. He just kept going and going. He was always in great spirits, always seemed very healthy. And I think we just kind of assumed he'd be around forever.
Yeah. Oh, and he just kind of assumed that he's never going to die. And I think one of the things that has come from his passing that's been really cool is a lot of people have just been posting quotes of stuff that he has said over the years. And I think to me, like, that's like the perfect memoriam of just really like not forgetting that Stan Lee is always going to be with us. So two bits real quick about this of stuff that I've seen. First one was a quote from him about uh, how he, like, at one point in his life was really hard on himself because all he did was make comic books, right? And he was like, man, like it really like hurts me that this is all I get to do, and I'm not really making at the time a lot of money doing this. But then somehow he saw that, like, at the end of the day, no matter who people are or what their job is, sorry, they always come back to entertainment. And so through that, he decided, you know what? No, like, this is totally worth it. This is totally worth it to tell stories to people because they will listen. And at the end of the day, that's what they want. So, and then the other one was just sad. And like, once the next Marvel movie comes out, we'll be waiting the entire movie for a Stan Lee cameo.
He filmed quite a few of his next cameos. I firmly believe I believe Avengers 4 will end with it'll just say on black screen and white text, "For Stan, Excelsior."
Yep. And I'm not ready. I will not be emotionally ready for that.
What the two things that I have taken away over the past few days is, you kind of hinted at it, but the unification that this kind of brought, like, fans across the board, Marvel fans, DC fans, movie fans in general, everyone is kind of rallying together, be like, this guy was awesome. This guy did this in my life. This guy did this because of what he made. He did this, that, and the other thing. And I think that's so cool. And I was doing okay with his passing, because I didn't know him personally, but his work has definitely impacted my life in a lot of different ways. But there's one that I almost broke down when I was like, no. And it was, somebody made this fantastic meme of, it's the end of Toy Story 3, and Andy is Stan Lee, and Bonnie is Kevin Feige.
Yes, I've seen that.
Stan Lee is giving all these Marvel characters over to Kevin Feige, and I'm thinking the whole time, Woody Spider-Man. If that's the case, man, I'm going to break it. I'm going to lose it, man. And sure enough, he gets to the bottom of the bin, just like in Toy Story 3, and instead of Woody, it's Spider-Man. He's like, oh, it's Spider-Man. How'd he get here? Now, this one means the most to me, so you got to take good care of him. And I'm just like, oh, man. I was not ready for that, but it's so true, and I feel like, say what you will about the Marvel movies, I know we disagree on them from time to time, but Kevin Feige, he's doing okay. He's the Bonnie of the situation. He's going to take care of it. I think now more than ever, he's going to continue on this great legacy that Stan left behind for us. But us as fans have a responsibility to keep his vision of an ideal comic book world alive, and just enjoy what he started and kind of forge our own paths as comic book fans and as movie fans to just try and make the world a better place like he did.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. Well, the one meme that I saw that got me was Stan Lee was drawing at his drawing board, and then slowly he breaks apart and drifts off into the wind, like in the Infinity War.
Yep, that one too.
But nope. Oh, I was not emotionally ready for that.
Yeah. Speaking of not emotionally ready, I think this will be one of the most emotional movies of next year by a wide margin. Toy Story 4 finally has its teaser trailer and some posters. Before I delve into this, because I actually have a lot to say on this, Josh, what did you think about all this Toy Story 4 news that we got this week?
All right, so I like the poster. I think it's very simple. And I like... Okay. the original teaser with everybody kind of dancing or whatever in a circle is very interesting. It doesn't really do much for me as far as telling me what the movie's about, but it's just a cheap teaser, so whatever. We'll leave it be. Yeah, it just kind of like was like, hey guys, this is happening. Whether you like it or not. Because I thought 3 was the perfect ending, and to keep all of everything that's coming from this movie, all of the media from it is like this feels like the last one, and it's
It
like,
will be.
but I know, but 3 was like the tie off. Whatever.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I did. However, I'm starting to turn around a little bit, and now I'm actually starting to get nervous for this movie. Not because I'm afraid it's going to be bad, but because I don't know if my body will be able to produce enough tears that this is going to require.
Fair enough.
So,
I'm going to touch on the what is it, the Duck and Bunny
oh yeah, Key and
team
Peele.
thing? Yeah, that was actually kind of like, it was really interesting, kind of fun. I think my one complaint is like maybe the humor in it didn't quite. There was little bits and pieces that didn't quite feel like they were like Toy Story esque. I
Yeah.
guess, I don't know.
So
Maybe that's just because I haven't watched the Toy Story movie in forever, but still.
hadn't even thought about this until you just now brought it up with Ducky and Bunny. Um, what are the odds they become the new Buzz and Woody after this movie's done?
The odds are too high.
Because, okay, so here's my overall thoughts on this, and I kind of actually have, as does this channel, have a connection strongly to Toy Story 4 in particular. Toy Story itself was the first movie I ever saw in theaters, so I will always have a very, very strong emotional attachment to Toy Story. But Toy Story 4 in
Yeah.
particular, the first video I ever published on Uncharted Media back when, at the time, I think it was Movie Guy 17 or 17 Movie Reviews, whatever I had it named as at the time, my very first video ever, November 9th, 2014, I looked it up earlier this week, was Toy Story 4, good idea or bad? And that was 4 years ago. And I've just been like, are we getting no updates whatsoever? And everything that we've been getting news-wise out of this, not even plot-wise, but news-wise, has me very worried about how sad it's going to be. Like, both Tim Allen and Tom Hanks have come out and said that their final day's recording was highly emotional and that they couldn't even look at anybody else in the room because they were crying so hard. And I'm going, oh gosh, no. So what we do know plot-wise is 4 will see Woody and probably the rest of the gang on the hunt to find Bo Peep, who was absent from 3. They didn't really give a reason. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Toy Story 4 ends with Woody leaving his friends and all the rest of the toys behind to live the rest of his life with Bo Peep. And that's where we have to say goodbye to Woody, where the rest of the toys live on with Bonnie or possibly even a new owner, because it's been 8 years since Toy Story 3, so maybe Bonnie's grown up now. And the toys have to stay behind, and Woody finds a new life, and the rest of the toys realize sometimes it's okay. You grow up and you move on, but your friends will always be with you. And Woody ends his story with Bo Peep.
Which makes it wouldn't be a bad idea. Start it how it began. And she's missing from 2, isn't she? As well?
No, because remember she kisses Woody goodbye as they go to find Buzz. No, she kisses Buzz goodbye when they go to find Woody.
You're right.
But
I haven't seen 2 in so long.
I also think it'll end, if this is truly the last Toy Story movie, it'll end how it begins. Of the first movie opens with that cloud wallpaper and Woody popping up.
Yeah.
I think it'll end with Woody and the cloud wallpaper again. That'll be the final shot of Toy Story 4 will be that cloud wallpaper and Woody walking off into the sunset, more or less.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm still nervous. See, I don't think that Pixar will screw this up because they're going to put everything into it because it's Toy Story. This is the bread and butter, man. Like, this is the thing that started it all.
Yeah, this is easily their most beloved franchise. Like, there's not a
Exactly.
bad Toy Story.
Yeah, exactly. And so I don't think they won't treat any of it with respect. I think they're really gonna treat all the lore, all of the fans with a lot of respect. They're gonna have to show me, I guess, because my opinion matters. Um, that this one was worth making because I already cried like a little baby in the third one.
Oh, I still do, unashamedly.
Oh, dude. Well, okay, so the third one came out when I graduated high school. So, like, my mom and I, as like our last kind of like mother son, date thing before I was a big old college boy, was go see Toy Story 3. So both of us were just bawling. It was great. Anyway.
Yeah. So if they say 4 is going to be more emotional than 3, I don't know if I'm ready for that. Let's
Yeah,
let's
no, I don't think I am.
let's transition away from heavy topics, shall we?
Yeah, I'm down.
Let's
So let's
talk
have some fun,
Pokemon.
man. Yes. Oh my goodness. This trailer came out of nowhere. I forgot that they were doing this.
So what Josh was referring to, and this really did come out of nowhere. So we are getting a Detective Pikachu movie, which I kind of remembered we were getting, with Ryan Reynolds voicing Pikachu himself. And I will go on record saying, no trailer this year has been more surprisingly pleasant than this trailer for Detective Pikachu. This thing was amazing. I had zero expectations, forgot that this movie was happening, and now this jumps to like super high on my priority list for 2019 of I need to see this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because like all of just everything about this is so perfect. Because if you haven't seen it, just go see the stinking trailer. What are you waiting for? It's first off aesthetically beautiful.
Oh
Just
yeah, those Pokemon look fantastic.
Pokemon. It would have been very easy to make them kind of uncomfortable looking. Mr. Mime kind of makes me uncomfortable a little bit, but I think they kind of make jokes about it to make you feel like, okay, I'm supposed to be uncomfortable by him. But yeah, no, like I was impressed, like way impressed.
Yeah, I didn't think Ryan Reynolds also would work for Pikachu. However, once he started talking, I was like, all right, I'm on board. This actually works. But to me, as someone that actually wasn't a huge Pokemon fan, I was more of a Yu-Gi-Oh fan and the diehard Yu-Gi-Oh fan at that. It was so cool seeing live action versions of Pokemon. Like I'm familiar with the different creatures and the various Pokemon, like the really famous ones. I lost it when I saw Charizard. I was like,
Dude,
he's perfect. He looks so good.
oh my goodness! And Jigglypuff looks incredible. All the Bulbasaurs, like it just blows me away. And I think part of that's just because I forgot this was happening.
Yeah. And actually, we were joking about it at my work earlier today of how all of us are blown away from the trailer. And if this is supposed to be Detective Pikachu, what we would like to see kind of happen is kind of like a self-awareness to the movie of like maybe Team Rocket is the bad guy. And then when you find that out, it's like, well, who else would it be?
Yeah, no, totally.
Or like Mewtwo or somebody, one of the really iconic characters.
Well, I don't know if they do Mewtwo though.
I don't know, maybe Mewtwo's a murderer or something. I don't know.
I mean, kinda. I don't know, man. Well, I guess we'll find out. We don't really know anything much about the storyline.
Yeah. Well, the only question I have coming out of this, will there be any cameos or references to Ash?
I think there will be because of the mention of like that basically Pokemon trainers were a thing, or still are, or something like that. And like they do give mention to a little bit of hints to all the tournaments. So I mean, I don't see why not.
Someone at my work suggested, and I hadn't even thought about this, and I don't think it'll be the case, but so in the trailer, the boy is looking for his dad. How great would it be if his dad was Ash?
I'm going to flip that because of the main character's race.
Yeah, that's what kind of shot us down. But imagine if, like, at the end of the movie, it's like, hey, kid, good job. What's your name? Ketchum, sir. And then you're just like, oh, he's got lineage.
I see. Okay, but with that, I feel like that would bite some of the Pokemon people in the butt a little bit. That's why,
I'm not saying he will or even is probably. I'm saying there's like 0 chance he is even related to Ash, but I will say with 95% certainty, Ash will be mentioned or cameoed somehow in this movie.
Yeah, no, I agree. Oh, you almost can't do it without mentioning him. I wouldn't be surprised if he's related to Brock in some way, shape, or form.
That would be cool.
Yeah. I mean, because it's stated that Brock has all these brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm. But
and
yeah,
technically, do we have a name for this character yet?
No.
Okay. No, never mind. I was going to say, because it could be potential, because Brock doesn't have a dad either. So maybe this is Brock. But then again, at the same time, that the characters' personalities don't match at all.
Yeah, we'll have to find out. Like I said, this really jumped pretty high on my priority list. So I'm curious to see going forward, like if the other trailers will live up to this hype. If I don't know, I'm just really curious to see where this goes. There's another trailer that dropped earlier today that surprised the crap out of me because we did get a teaser trailer for this already, and that teaser trailer was hot garbage, and that is a movie called Fighting with My Family. I know a lot of you probably out there have no idea what this is about because it is a wrestling movie. It is, but it isn't a wrestling movie. So it's a movie produced by WWE Studios. So for the first time in their lives, they may actually have a good movie. It's essentially a true story about former wrestler Paige, who is now the SmackDown general manager. Former wrestler Paige, who comes from this wrestling family, her journey to get into the WWE. It's produced by The Rock, directed by Stephen Merchant, who is also in the movie. And honestly, this looks like one of the best WWE movies they've made, like, about wrestling ever. This looks really good and actually accurate to wrestling lifestyle.
Yeah. See, what I think makes this trailer so good and makes us have promise in it, despite it being WWE. Because if you've watched any WWE produced movies, they're very close to hot garbage.
Yep.
But I like it because it's not. First of all, this might be the first like non-action movie, like comedy, like Pacifier or whatever. That we.
Hey, don't you be talking crap about the Pacifier?
No, not Pacifier. It's the one I'm looking at. I can see the poster in my head. It's the one with Triple H, and he's like
the chaperone.
Yeah, the chaperone. That was trash. But no, yeah, it's just like this is the first of its kind of, in a way. And it's kind of cool that WWE has kind of gotten behind Paige on this, because it would have been very easy, given everything that Paige has gone through and has happened to her in the last 5 years. It would be very easy for them to not support her on this at all.
Yeah. Also piggybacking off that with Paige, the actress that they got to play Paige, holy crap, has she nailed the voice and the aesthetics.
Oh, yeah.
This girl looks and sounds just like Paige. Like some of the other characters in the trailer, I could tell are specific characters. Like there's a couple shots of a character that's clearly supposed to be Charlotte Flair that doesn't really look like Charlotte Flair, but they got enough down of the costume that I could tell who it is. There's a Sasha Banks in there. There's one cause of concern that I have in the trailer. Yeah. So there's a shot towards the end where it looks like she's making her debut the night that she wins the Divas Championship against AJ Lee. Yes. We know our wrestling. So the
Yeah,
night
we
Paige
kind of do.
debuted in 2014 was the night after Daniel Bryan won at WrestleMania 30. I know this time period really well because this is when I got into wrestling.
Yep.
In the trailer, it looks like the night that the movie's going to end with her winning the Divas Championship from AJ Lee. From the trailer, it looks like she's wrestling Nikki Bella, which
Mm.
would really annoy the crap out of me if they have this movie end with her winning the Divas Championship from Nikki Bella, which she never did. She won the title off AJ
Yeah.
Lee, like changing
Yeah.
who she won it off of, and that's just a weird nitpick. I know an actress is playing AJ Lee in the movie, so I don't think it'll actually end up being someone else. I kind of
Yeah.
want them to get that part down right and not just kind of be like, it was some random opponent or that person that was on a reality show or whatever else.
No,
But
yeah.
I think it was just
It
kind
was
of
a really big
weird
deal.
editing in the trailer to make it seem like she wins the title off Nikki Bella.
Oh yeah. So I would say that I don't think they'll end it there, but at the same time, I don't know where you would end it if it's not there. Because if not, then you got to go all the way up to her retirement.
Yeah, I think they finished filming almost all of this. Like this has been filmed in the can for a while now, and they kept getting pushed back further and further. So I don't know if it's gonna have any part of her. I still think temporary retirement. I don't think she's done forever. She's still like 24, 25, 26. So if she can find good treatment, she may come back to actual wrestling. But I like that this will peel back the curtain of the wrestling world, which is often misunderstood for various different reasons by people that don't really know it. Wrestling, to me, it's more fascinating behind the scenes than actually what's on the camera, what's seen in front of an audience. And I'm really looking forward to seeing this like behind the curtain approach from people within the industry. The fact that Rock is so invested in this and he's producing the movie, to me, that's a good sign that he wants to like peel back the curtain and kind of pay it forward in the wrestling business, even if he's not willing to do it in the ring.
Yeah. Wow. And I listened to the ENC podcast a lot. I'm not caught up on it for various reasons, but they did an episode with Paige where she talks about this movie and how it was dead in the water for some time. They couldn't get really any traction on any of it. And then somehow Rock got a hand on the script and was like, this is awesome. Let's do it. And like has been full steam ahead ever since then. So like Rock is incredibly invested.
Interesting. So yeah, I think it's February now. So I went from zero interest to, yeah, I'll probably check this out. I'm really curious to see if they can successfully pull this off. Now, for something entirely different, but not at all surprising, we are getting a Pacific Rim anime series coming to Netflix, to which I just go, yeah, that's a logical step because Pacific Rim more or less already is an anime.
Well, yeah, I agree. It's, I think, okay. So, sometimes I feel like I'm in the minority here.
You don't like Pacific Rim, do you?
Bro, I love Pacific
Rim. Okay, good.
Everybody that I have ever talked to hates on it all the time.
Really?
I think it's a lot of fun. And they're like, it's just a big robots fighting big aliens. Like, yeah. Like,
but it's done well.
What else do you want?
Well, the first one was.
Yeah. But I agree, though. It's the next logical step. As much as I would like to see another one and see it done well in live action, making an anime of it makes sense.
In a perfect world, this wouldn't be an anime series. It would be another movie where they fight Godzilla and King Kong in a triple threat match.
No holds barred.
Dude, I'm never giving up hope on that because they are run by the same studio. They're still owned by Legendary and Warner Brothers. Please, maybe
Why not,
even
right?
that's how you bring in Mecha Godzilla, is using the Jaeger technology. But
That would be cool.
I've thought way too much about this because I love Pacific Rim. But yeah,
Cool.
I'd be very curious to see how they do this and what age demographic it'll be reached for. It will be more of the kids, more of the young adults, more of our adults. Regardless of the age demographic, I will absolutely be checking it out to see how it is. Doesn't necessarily translate to it'll be a good show, but I'll absolutely give it a try because I love Pacific Rim, at least the first one, and just
Yeah.
the possibilities that it opened up. And I'm still disappointed that it didn't do better, that we couldn't have got a sequel sooner and maybe got a better sequel. But
Yeah.
that it's in the past now, and I still thoroughly enjoy the first Pacific Rim, and I kind of want to dive back into that world to see what other stories we can tell.
Yeah, I agree. And it would be interesting if they could use this opportunity to tell us more about the aliens.
Yes. Um, Transitioning, I'll lump our next two stories together because they're essentially on the same platform. We first up have Pedro Pascal has been cast as the lead in the upcoming Disney Plus, now the name of the Disney streaming service, Disney Plus, series The Mandalorian. Cool. And then the other part of this is Cassian Andor, the rebel leader from Rogue One, is also getting his own spin-off show on Disney Plus. One of these things I'm far more excited about than the other. Josh, can you guess which one?
The Mandalorian?
Of course, because screw Rogue One.
I mean, okay, hold on. All right? I need you to pump the brakes a little bit. Because...
Except for K2SO.
Okay, listen. The character they're going with on this, I like him a lot. And I think some of the stuff that he hints at that he's been through in Rogue One, despite your feelings on the movie, which I still enjoy, I think could be a lot of fun to watch. Could have like a I'm gonna shoot myself in the foot already off the get go, but it could have a Han Solo vibe to it. Not the Solo movie, but a Han Solo vibe to
essentially what Solo should have been.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that is my only concern with this Cassian Andor show is we could spend more time with this character. That's totally fine. Maybe it'll help make Rogue One a little bit better for me. My worry is that it will get soloed of, hey, he wasn't actually a bad guy this whole time, just misunderstood. Like, make no doubt about it, in Solo, Han Solo is a good guy, so it kind of nerfs his appearance in A New Hope and his story arc a little bit of, no, when we meet him in A New Hope, he's definitely a bad guy that's willing to kill people. Same thing with Cassian. He straight up murders several people. I don't want him to get turned into, oh, he's a good guy that does good things like Disney is prone to do, of kind of retcon characters so they're more family friendly. I want this to be a pretty hard PG-13 R show of, this dude has done bad things to start a rebellion, and the rebellion is not black and white. There's some gray area. I want to see more of that, but I don't know if we'll get it.
Pitch it like a Blacklist type show.
Yes.
A lot of political intrigue, a lot of like line blurring of good, like at the core, yeah, he's a good dude. But he does some things to get his point across and to get the rebellion to a place where it can actually make some headway that are really shady. And yeah, it could work. It really could work. As far as the Mandalorian thing goes, their lead, I could go either way on. Honestly.
Yeah, I'll be curious in a few months to reevaluate it. So I say that because right now this guy is mostly known for Game of Thrones, which we'll talk about here in a second. But I'm having my eye on him because he's actually in Wonder Woman 1984 coming out next year. Now the rumors are, spoiler alert, maybe, again, this is just a rumor. So if you don't want any spoilers whatsoever on Wonder Woman 1984, tune out for a couple minutes. There's rumors that this actor is actually playing a human version of Hades, and he's actually how Steve Trevor's coming back to life, which makes me very curious
That makes sense. And honestly, him specifically, I could totally see him playing that kind of character.
Yeah. So my opinion on him as the lead, I haven't seen him in enough stuff to properly gauge whether
Yeah.
it's a good decision or a bad decision. I'll reserve judgment for how he does in Wonder Woman, more or less, I think, as the bad guy, besides Cheetah, potentially as Hades. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm still really excited for The Mandalorian just because I think it's a good concept, and also not making the same mistake as casting Andor series, not setting it between episodes 3 and 4. For the love of all that's good in the Star Wars universe, can we please get out of that time window and move on to literally any other time period?
Yes. So which is, and this is probably just me being just a nerd and wanting what I want. They're going with after Return of the Jedi time period for Mandalorian, and I would have preferred to go back in time way before the first Star Wars movie and do the Mandalorian Wars, but whatever, I'll just sit here and pout and enjoy the show when it comes out.
Well, speaking of wars, for our last news topic today, before we get into the general discussion, it's not movie news, it's TV news. Game of Thrones is coming back for its final season. That's not news. What is news is it officially has a return date of April 2019, which actually to me is sooner than I was expecting. Yes, it's like a whole 2 years since the last episode or so aired, I think, but I was kind of expecting it at the tail end of 2019. I can't remember the last time I watched a Game of Thrones, but I'm more than caught up. Like, I watched it in college with some buddies. So I'm more invested in to see how it ends and how many people die more than anything else. That being said, sure, bring it on. I'm really curious more to see this final fight that they keep hinting at that's like the biggest fight in TV or movie history.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care.
Okay, then.
I'm straight with you. I up until a certain point, and I'm trying not to, drop any spoilers, but once a certain brat kind of makes his exit, I was like, that's all I needed from the show. So I haven't really watched since
more
then.
brats. I know which brat you're referring to, but there are other brats that ascend to be even brattier.
I'm aware, and I don't care. I got what I needed for the show. I'm done. Goodbye. And even then, like I wasn't a big fan of the show because they're like, hey, like it's this mystical world, but really not a lot of like really mystical stuff kind of happens. It's more supernatural, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, besides maybe I just dragons,
and demon babies.
Well, yeah, that too. But
don't. I'm not gonna let anybody forget that happened because nobody wants to talk about it.
Well, I think that about covers it for news topics today, and I have this week's sponsorship. Before we get into our main discussion, this episode is sponsored by Pop Figures, to which I have far, far too many.
Oh, well, that's good. I mean, so you have pop figures like I have fat.
I don't know. Do you have over 50 of them?
Probably, honestly. Jeez. Fat cells or fat pounds?
I don't know. Either way, I think we're closing in on 50 when it comes to Pop Figures. So this episode is sponsored by Pop Figures.
I have a Red Ranger in my car that I put on my dashboard.
We have a Red Ranger, proudly.
I do, and it's OG Ranger, not the new one. Even though I do love the new designs and stuff, I like the old one. It looks cool.
Oh yeah, our Red Ranger Pop Figures OG too. What else would we do?
Exactly.
But yeah, so originally our discussion today was going to be best combat sports movies in preparation for Creed 2. However, due to the passing of Stan Lee, we're just like, nope, let's talk about the great man's legacy. So this is just gonna kind of be a general Marvel discussion of like our fondest memories with the franchise of Marvel, any of the characters, any Stan Lee stories we may have. For me, it's mainly going to be Spider-Man stuff because to me, Spider-Man will always be my guy. Spider-Man was my first superhero, really. I had Batman the Animated Series that was on every day at 4:30 after the Addams Family on Cartoon Network. But if it wasn't that, it was the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, and that was my gateway drug into superheroes to start off with.
That much like you, I wasn't. Well, sorry. Let me rephrase. Not a lot like you. My first kind of taste of Marvel was in comics, and like my uncle is a huge comic, like boxes on boxes on boxes of comics that he has at his house.
Yep.
So
I'm sure I don't know what that's like as the proud owner of like 800 comic books.
Yeah, exactly. So I unfortunately had to, due to some financial issues, had to get rid of a good chunk of them. But anyway, sad. I'm much like my spirit animal, Nick Cage, in that way. But so I was like, I saw him reading a comic, and I was like, wow, what is that? And he's like, it's a comic book. You would like these, actually, probably. Here, let me go get one that you might enjoy. And he went and got it and handed me the first issue of Spider-Man, the Unlimited series arc of storytelling. So my first comics that I ever read was that Unlimited arc. So the one that the Andrew Garfield series is based off of.
Ultimate?
But Ultimate. I'm sorry. Obviously, I remember so much. But yeah, the Ultimate Spider-Man was the first one that I grew up with. So yeah, Spider-Man, and then after that it was Spider-Man. It was Wolverine. Got really into Wolverine.
That makes sense. If anybody knows Josh personally, his love of Wolverine, that actually makes a lot of sense for your personality and for your height.
I mean, that's why I've been trying to get Tom Hardy. I have been waving that flag that Tom Hardy needs to be the next Wolverine, but I don't think that'll ever happen.
No, now that he's Venom, successfully?
Question mark. But yeah, no, but yeah, a lot like you in that way, though. Spider-Man was my gateway, and I have early memories of watching I want to say the 1980s animated show.
I think it's 90s.
Well, no. The one before that like had a very like Batman 66.
Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends?
Yes.
With
that was the first show
Firestar and Iceman?
Yes. And the Green Goblin, his little glider sounded like an Oldsmobile from like the 1920s. It was the funniest thing in the face of the planet. But yeah, no, I'm about there, right up there with you on how I got into the biz.
It actually kind of blew my mind the day that I realized that old Spider-Man cartoon where he teams up with those other two people, it's by the same people that did Scooby-Doo.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Looking at their production values, yes.
Yeah.
Production-wise, they have not aged well, either of those shows. I love Scooby-Doo, but yeah.
No. I saw it at like a sleepover at a friend's house, and he was like, "Hey, you guys want to see something really funny?" And put that on. So we were sitting there at like 2 a.m, like in middle school or something, like laughing our heads off because Green Goblin's glider sounds like it's farting its way across the screen.
Is it that one or the animated series before that gets all the fantastic memes? Where it has that great voiceover.
That one. Yeah. Oh, I'm pretty sure it's that one. If I'm remembering the art correctly.
Yeah. Going off Spider-Man, there's a great moment that I always read in the comics that I crossed my fingers and I hoped one day we'd get it in a Spider-Man movie. Besides Spider-Man, Venom, Carnage triple threat match, there's one moment in particular that I read time and time again in the comics that I hoped to see on the big screen, and we finally did in Homecoming, and that was one of the most profound, like, emotional moments for me in a superhero movie I can ever think of, because it was something that I wanted to for a really, really long time, and it just made my heart so happy to see it, because to me, it was Spider-Man personified, it was a superhero personified, and it's the scene where um, Peter Parker, because it's not Spider-Man in this scene, it's Peter Parker, gets flattened by the building that Vulture more or less drops on him. And so
Yeah.
he gets that voiceover from Iron Man, who I thought was going to be a bigger presence in Homecoming, but he was perfectly used. He gets this voiceover of, if you can't have the suit, no, if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it, which echoes this great scene in the comics where Peter is flattened under this big machine that Doc Ock dropped on him, and Aunt May's in the hospital with, I think, either high fever or cancer or something really serious, and he thinks he's going to be trapped under this machine and die. And Aunt May will die because he wasn't there to help in time. And they echo it perfectly in the movie with, like, Peter being flattened. And in this moment, you don't see him as a superhero. You see him as a kid, which is the reason why I think me, along with millions of other people, latched onto this character that Stan Lee created, because at his core, he's a kid. He's one of us. He's a person. He struggles more than anybody. He's the most human superhero there is. Yes, he's got all these great powers, but he's human. He's got struggles. The new Spider-Man game does that fantastically. Of some of the worst crap that he has to go through, it has nothing to do with what he's doing with the Spider-Man suit on. It's all his personal stuff. And in the scene, he's flattened, he's dejected, he's defeated, and he's crying out for help because he's essentially this 16, 17-year-old kid who thinks he's going to die. And he doesn't have his mask or anything. And you hear that great, if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it. And he's just like, come on, Spider-Man, come on, Spider-Man. The music swells. Not only does it swell, but it's that classic Spider-Man, do, 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 do. And he lifts up the thing. I'm not going to lie, that was the biggest reaction I've ever gotten, possibly in any Marvel movie ever, because that to me was the perfect Spider-Man moment that I've always wanted, because Spider-Man means so much to me. And that was the scene that really, to me, is like, this is why we love heroes, and this is why we love Spider-Man, because he's, I don't know, it's just hard to describe, but it's Spider-Man, and it oozed that classic Stan Lee Spider-Man, especially of throwback, but still current to anybody watching. And I'm gonna ramble on this scene all day, but it really means a lot to me. That Spider-Man Homecoming in general just means a lot to me, because it felt like the Spider-Man cartoons that I grew up on, just in a new version.
Yeah, I get that. And I'm still waiting for my certain Wolverine moments to happen for me, but I got versions of them in Logan, but there's a comic I used to have that was like a single issue that was really good, and I could never find what series it was a part of, but it was the first comic I ever owned, because my uncle was like, you seem to really like Wolverine. Here, take this. And I was like, all right, thanks, man. But like in it, it's Wolverine. They find basically a warehouse that like some kind of signals coming from that in Canada, that Wolverine's kind of like, that classic storyline for him, that he's always looking for his past, always looking, trying to learn more about who he was. And so he's getting bits and pieces of memory back through Charles helping him out. And so they get this signal from this warehouse, and so they all go out, and like Jubilee is in the plane, and she's calling him Wolvie, and it makes me uncomfortable and all this fun stuff, because she's like 19 and he's close to 200 years old, but he like basically goes down here to this warehouse, and somebody has set it up to house every single major memory he's ever had of like a lot of everybody from before the X-Men. So like Silver, he's got something in there with Silver Fox. He's got some memories in there with Sabretooth and stuff like that. Like, and then he's got memories of, man, what is his name? I forget. He's got a claw for a hand. His name wasn't important, but he's the one pulling all the strings. But he's just like going through this entire section of the warehouse that's just, he's faced with not just like the polarizing tough moments, but also the good ones. And like to see, for him to realize, man, like I've been through a lot of pain, but like I've been through a lot of good too. So he's going through all these moments, and he comes to this giant door. And for those who know the Logan lore, the robot Shiva comes out to kill him. This is like almost 4 or 5 pages of him just fighting this robot, and it's because the robot can put itself back together. So obviously, two self-healing things going back to back, going at each other is very entertaining. But you get this. It was the first time I had seen a character with his back legitimately with his back against a wall, with literally no hope of being able to get out of this ever, seemingly nonstop struggle. And literally, he just goes, you know what? Well, I've cut off all these ligaments and stuff like this. Well, let's just shred you. How about that? And just literally cuts every piece off and just shreds the entire robot. And it doesn't get back together. And he's like, well, that was interesting. Well, I didn't find what I wanted here. And just like gets up and leaves. And it was just, I don't know. There's moments for me with Wolverine that he's not just this dude that has all these cool, and again, this is a theme I think you and I have seen in Marvel, and as much trash as I talk about their movies, it's in their movies as well, is these characters aren't just superheroes. They're people that happen to have powers. They go through stuff. And for me, and those who know me probably aren't that surprised of how attached I am to Logan because of the struggle that he goes through.
I think you brought it up earlier with the memories. It makes me think of one of my favorite X-Men scenes, and it actually, it's not in Logan, although that's just another realm of amazing right there. It's actually in Days of Future Past, which I think is my second favorite X-Men movie after Logan. But it's when Charles Xavier's at his lowest point, and and Logan more or less grabs him, and he's just like, "Hold me, so you can see my memories." And Professor X is seeing all the stuff that Wolverine is going through, all the crap that he's been through. And he's just like, "There's so much pain. There's so much suffering here. How can anybody live through all this pain?" And Wolverine's just like, "But there's so much hope. There's so much good in here too, and it's all because of you." And then because of that, he gets the power back on, and it's just such a good moment.
It really is. I think the X-Men in general, you can say what you want about it. It's just a political cartoon, like it's just we understand it's not just
but
about
a political cartoon when the world needed it most, honestly.
Oh yeah, when it came out, it was needed. Like, we think stuff is bad now. Like, it's a lot of politics has come a long way, and X-Men will also always have a place in my heart. The comics, anyway, and honestly, really TV show too, though.
Oh yeah, the original animated one is one of the best animated shows of all time, and you can actually make the case that X-Men, they may not be addressing it a whole bunch with the newer movies in terms of like the
Yeah.
political subtext is, but X-Men are just as relevant now as they were when they were first created, honestly, in the
Oh
climate of the
yeah.
world today.
Oh yeah. I completely agree. I think that has always been the thing. Again, these are people with superpowers. They're going through so much. Like the something I was reminded of the when looking up stuff for the Cloak and Dagger show, because I'd read they'd appeared in different comics that I'd seen, but I didn't know much about them. And just how these two characters legitimately can't live without each other. Like there's moments where they don't like each other, like legitimately don't like each other, but they have to figure out a way to coexist, because if they don't, they cease to exist. So it's just I think, and that's always something that Marvel, specifically, let's just go ahead and say Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, the, they have done very well with Marvel and giving us these stories that are very personal, and they're not necessarily, as much as I love DC, they're not about stories of godlike characters figuring out how to be human.
Yeah. And just you saying that kind of makes me think of something I never really thought about with Marvel, but the more I think about it, it's so true. What Stan Lee did with the Marvel characters, what he did with these stories that he told, it's more or less the modern equivalent of Aesop's Fables. They're stories
Oh yeah.
with a message. Like the X-Men are absolutely a subtext for other things, but then you also have Spider-Man, who is essentially just trying to be a good person, and it's morals, it's values. DC, absolutely, they still have that, but I don't know if they are do as much as Marvel does of more or less telling these morality stories and the way that Stan Lee would go about them, of make it for all generations to love and endure and pass on to their kids.
Absolutely. And so, if we're going to talk about like stuff that we're attached to, let's go ahead and start bumping over here to the movies. One of the closest memories I have with my dad is the Fantastic Four versus the Silver Surfer. That
Which could have
movie
been a
is
lot worse. People seem to think it's one of the worst of
dude,
all
yeah.
time. I don't think it's that bad.
Oh no, like, it's actually quite enjoyable,
I
especially when
enjoyed
you
that
like.
one more than the first Fantastic Four. I still think
Oh
Silver
yeah,
Surfer is probably the best of the Fantastic Four movies. None of them are good, but that one's probably the best of the bunch.
yeah, exactly. But I have memories of seeing Silver Surfer with my dad, of just like seeing this super cool characters. I mean, they screwed Galactus up, but whatever. But it was just I've got a lot of memories with these Marvel movies, and maybe it's because DC really hasn't done much as cinema wise, but at the same time, like they're as much. Again, I'm gonna say this a lot because I talk a lot of trash about Marvel movies, specifically Disney Marvel movies. And sometimes I think it's warranted. But at the end of the day, they're a lot of fun, and they're really good popcorn flicks. And they're movies you can share with your kids. Like you said earlier, it's because of the morality. Like these characters are and should be learning something. It's one of the reasons why I have issues with Civil War, is because nobody learns anything at the end.
Yeah, the comic they
Like
do.
that was
The comic they do. That's why, yeah, I completely
yeah.
agree with some of your statements about the movie of Civil War. Of like, they could have gone a little further of making it. It was very much a you side with Captain America type of thing. Of they didn't really do a good job of making you see both sides of the problem,
Yeah.
but there's still a morality thing with both the comic and the movie of Civil War. Um, yeah, Marvel, they've always told these great stories that clearly last, and even the ones that don't, people still remember because of the fan base. Take, for example, the Clone Saga with Spider-Man. That's considered to be one of the worst Spider-Man stories of all time, but people still remember it because Spider-Man means a lot to them.
Exactly. So something I want to talk about is that has never been done before and will probably never be duplicated ever again is the build to the first Avengers movie.
Yeah, we'll never be able to top
Because
that ever.
no, ever, because like, and part of that is just because of how oversaturated the market is now, and part of that is just because now you can't duplicate it because you've seen it. But same time, like Iron Man 1 came out, and first of all, it's Iron Man. And before, don't let anybody tell you, Iron Man was not a popular hero
Exactly.
before
He was a
before that
B-lister.
movie. Oh, dude. And somehow because the first one is so good. It's so entertaining. And you're like, "Oh, that was fun. That's cool. That was a good time. That was a good time." And then all of a sudden, they start building a world out of nowhere, and you're like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa!" So you're telling me you're gonna connect everything?
So,
And then all of a sudden, the first Avengers movies happens, and it's just it was such a and that iconic scene, that circle shot of them like towards the end of the movie. It's literally one of the best shots ever of them getting ready to get going. Like it's just yeah.
so you want to know something ironic?
Yeah.
I have a crap ton of old 80s and 90s comic books that I got from my uncle. Growing up, I was a huge Marvel fan. I still like them. I just don't know nearly as much about them as I do the DC universe, unless it's something Spider-Man related, because I never lost touch with Spider-Man. He's my dude. But I had different phases, and so I have a crap ton of Marvel comics. I hate Iron Man. I will say that now. I really loved the first Iron Man movie, but since then, the character of Iron Man has kind of taken several big steps back for me, and he's really become this unlikable guy. That being said, I would not be surprised in the slightest if I have over 100 Iron Man comics and probably over 100 Captain America comics. I have a whole bunch of the classics. I just like going back sometimes of just flipping through, not even necessarily knowing the overall story arc, but just flipping through some of these old comic books for hours on end, just seeing some of the cool artwork, some of the storytelling, seeing what was going on at the time with these characters, and seeing what the universe that Stan Lee had created, what was going on at the time. And even then, like, I may not have known what the story was, but it's still cool to physically have a piece of Marvel history, essentially, which is essentially what comics are, is a piece. It's a snapshot in time of a given story, of a certain universe, and that, to me, is one of the best things about comics that I always love so much.
No, I agree. And the Marvel universe now has taken on a whole nother life on its own, and I think the comics aren't as popular now because you have the movies and for certain reasons, and you can argue
the Marvel comics, I think,
why
aren't as popular because they're not good.
Yeah, they're not as good anymore.
Whereas DC,
they're
they're crapping on all fronts except the comics.
Yes.
Actually, no, they're doing well on everything except their movies.
Yes. That's always been the joke for me, is people can talk all the crap about DC's movies all they want. That's fine. But check out the other media that they do.
Like video games,
how we can't
check. We've got like 4 or 5 successful shows on the CW. Whether or not you watch them, that's up to you. But make no mistake, they're all highly successful. The animated stuff is good. That's been going continuously since Mask of the Phantasm. Video games, we destroy Marvel at, except for Spider-Man, which wasn't even really a Marvel Entertainment game. It was an Insomniac game, but that's another issue. But yeah, DC actually does well, except for the movies. But Marvel's got the movies on lock because they put in time and effort, and it's paid off well. Really Marvel movies are fun.
Well, and I think that it did to their credit that it came out of nowhere for the most part.
It came out of necessity. They made Iron Man because they absolutely had to, because they were about to be even more broke than they already were.
Oh yeah, totally.
Which is why they cast a B-list actor at the time with Robert Downey Jr., who was more or less coming off a big drug binge. Like, no one wanted to touch Robert Downey Jr. with a 10-foot pole.
Oh yeah, like fresh out of rehab. Like, it was his first movie back onto the scene, man. And he crushed it.
He is Iron Man.
He really is. Oh,
To me, every actor can be replaced in a given role, except for like maybe two or three people. Almost all of them that I can think of off the top of my head are Marvel characters. I think you can have a
yes,
new Iron Man. It just can't be Tony Stark because that is Robert Downey Jr.
yeah, and I think you can have another Captain America, but it can't be Rogers because that's Chris Evans.
Yeah, and then the other Marvel character that I'm like, it is absolutely impossible to recast them. J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh,
That
I agree.
no
That's
one
gonna
is J. Jonah but J.K. Simmons.
that's gonna happen eventually. Though.
I
It's
don't
gonna
know,
happen.
man. I could
It's
see
gonna
Marvel
happen.
bringing him back, actually.
Yeah. I mean, his character in Whiplash is basically J.K. Simmons just as a jazz teacher.
Yeah, essentially.
But well, I mean, we'll see, man. The sky is the limit for them as long as they play their cards right and not oversaturate the market, and that's fine. Like we'll be good.
Yeah, I think so. I think Stan Lee left behind an amazing legacy, um, incredible decades upon decades of work that influenced not just Marvel but DC as well. Did a lot of fantastic things for the comic book world and for millions around the world, and we are so indebted to everything that he did. I'll never be able to thank him enough for the characters that he created, for the stories that he told, for the universes that he built. But try my best from one fan to the creator. Stan Lee, thank you for everything that you did. You gave this guy hours upon hours of hope and joy with Spider Man and many other characters, and for that, I can never thank you enough. You will be sorely missed.
No, completely. But his legacy definitely lives on.
Josh, you got anything else you want to add to the table before we bring this home?
No, not at all. I will say, I like how I said not at all. Now I'm going to say something. Um, I will say I'm a little mad at Stan because I was really looking forward to our other topic of combat sports movies because
We'll get there. We'll
that's
get
my
there.
yeah, that is totally my niche. But yeah, we'll get there. But as always, it's always a pleasure, my friend.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for this week's episode of the Uncharted Media Podcast. If you like what you hear on whatever channel you're listening to this on, be sure to subscribe so you can make sure you always get the latest episodes. And as always, if you like what you see and want to see more, be sure to check us out also on YouTube at unchartedmedia.com/whatever. I'm losing my words here because I'm just too distracted, I guess. But Stan Lee, rest in peace. Stay sharp, movie guys and gals, and remember, Excelsior.